people think of them. And they mistake those voices from the outside, from society, from the culture, from the family, from their peers. They mistake that as their own. So we say this is a person that is an outside in person. Does that make sense? Is there any response to this? Do you recognize maybe yourself in that now or from earlier in your life or your children?
Does anyone have anyone maybe on their team that they could recognize this in? If you want to pop it in the chat, not the person's name, obviously, but
No.
Hey, y'all, I'm Jenny Yang. I'm Vice President of People Culture at 15.5, and this is extremely timely and relevant. So, as y'all know, it's just been a wild 2.5 years. And most recently with the Roe v. Wade coming out on Friday, it has highly impacted a handful of our team members in a very negative way. And our executive team, we proactively shared messaging a week in advance of that ruling, the final ruling, to say that we are, in fact, expanding our inclusive health stipend benefit to cover travel if necessary to states that cover abortions. And so we proactively got in front of it. However, there was a manager who escalated that they expected us, the leadership team, to be more communicative about it, to have a stance internally and externally,
Yes.
to there were a few themes that came up as additional themes that came up, where on Monday I had shared what our performance rating methodology and measurement was as well. Our performance review cycle starts tomorrow. And so I wanted to ensure that expectations were clear, people knew how they were going to be measured. And so the feedback received from this manager was that I expected our leadership to say that we're acknowledging that these world events may impact performance, right? I had a missed opportunity. So everything that you said, Marion, just there, I realized that, I did miss that opportunity. Like me as a people leader, yes, I definitely want to be able to name the state of humanity right now in this moment, and it's absolutely going to impact our performance. So that I own that was a miss on my part. And I think I don't feel bad about it. I'm learning, right? It was a blind spot that was called out. However, I just noticed that there's definitely expectations from team members of leaders nowadays to state these things front and center.
Yeah. And to take a stance. Yeah. Thank you so much. I mean, that is so helpful as a context for this, because a lot of us, and not just women, a lot of us tend to fall back. We regress, you could say, to earlier or less mature forms of mind. And the pleasing one, especially, when we get under stress and when we're not used to taking a stance, or we don't know what we're risking in terms of our career, in terms of relationships. And so there's something holding us back. And this developmental map is not there to feel bad, like you said, it is to acknowledge, to own it, and to realize when it's happening, and also what is something that I can do that makes sense in terms of maturity. I will speak about that goes in the direction of individuation and becoming this strong leader that is actually making a difference, especially under pressure, and when it is maybe in a more male environment that is expecting that from me and that my voice is heard. So yes, and also how to encourage other leaders where you see, okay, we are now in this time, we need more people to speak up, even though they may risk being accepted or they may risk as being seen difficult and so forth. But that's what we need. We need people to speak up. And I want to say last here, it's often not a question of them not being willing or them being cowards or them being weak. It's often a lack of capacity and a lack of maturity. So the idea would be to recognize that and then to know how to meet them there and then help them in ways that are developmentally making sense to them, to carve out that path for them step by step so that they grow the capacity to be courageous. Okay? So that's what I think is so helpful with this map. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you. And I'd love to hear more. So I really appreciate it. Yeah, so this pleasing form of mind. The thing is, we've all gone through it. I mean, you were a teenager, and there may be contexts where you fall most often into this action logic or logic behind your action, because maybe as a mom, maybe as somebody who's you're leading a group where you're more integrative and you're not really the strong leader, but you're somebody who's holding people together. And then you make that conscious choice to be the diplomat or the socialized leader. So that's not a bad stage to be at. It's just, as a leader in most business contexts today, you need to have a strong relationship with conflict and know your own inner voice. So from here, the socialized form of mind, the journey continues towards individuation, and we go through an interim stage that is the expert. So now, if you were in that situation, you're like, oh my God, should I speak up? And no, I may be afraid of causing some conflict or irritation. Realize that the expert form of mind is the next step in your journey of development, which means you could come up and argue with data. This is nothing new, maybe, but developmentally it makes sense to say, now you show up as the expert and you say, okay, I've had access to some studies and I have some information, and I think what we need as a team is this and that. And you come with objective data. So it's still not quite you with your strong inner voice, because that may be too far for you right now and too challenging. But one interim step could be to use this crutch of, okay, instead of being fully subjective, let me be objective. Use data that is still outside of myself. Okay, so the expert form of mind is the one that comes after the diplomat. It's still not a fully inside out, mature kind of form of mind. But like I said, it now is not dependent on other people's expectations and whether they like me or not. The expert now fully says, I have a great perspective and it's not mine, but it's based in data and so-called objectivity. So some of you may operate from there yourself, and you should, because that's a very valid place to be. It would be helpful to know when to do it and be most effective. And maybe some of you recognize that you have some peers or direct reports, or even some of your bosses and superiors come from an expert form of mind, which sometimes is not open to feedback if you're not an expert like them. Sometimes is overly rational and analytical, and maybe doesn't place as much attention on the relationship side. So maybe some of you recognize that there's somebody on your team who gets lost in detail. They cannot but look under the hood and analyze things, even though you are under pressure and you need them to see the bigger picture and just be fine with 80% or 70%. But they always have to do the 100%, and it drives you crazy and it slows you down. So that would be the typical, let's say, dynamic between the next stage, which is the achiever, which is where most successful leaders are operating from today. That's proven with data. This dynamic between the achiever that is now fully individuated, has strong set of values and own inner voice, and is independent of what other people think and expect of them. That's what we see as the strong, mature leader today. Open to feedback, always optimizing him or herself, and going crazy when they have somebody on their team that just isn't capable of stepping back and seeing the bigger picture, connecting the dots, and helping them think about the strategy, but always go into nitty-gritty detail. So I wonder, is that making sense to you? And it's maybe not just a personality thing, it's really a matter of capacity of mind. So I would love to hear, if you have any examples, it's always helpful to hear those live stories.
I have to drop off here in a couple of minutes because of another meeting, but this is so helpful because I feel like that's exactly what I struggle with,
Okay.
in my day-to-day interactions with some colleagues and with team members. So a great example, I think, listening to what you're saying, was an interaction we had with a request that we had to upper management here in the team. And so I led that conversation and I requested, do you think you could let us know next time you do this so that we are aware, something that affected our team? And so one of my teammates, what he said was, well, I just want to know what is common, what is procedure, what does people do? And I'm thinking, what does it matter? We should request what we need based on our opinion for our team, as opposed to just conform with what everyone else does. So I think from listening to you, it's just the difference in our mindsets that I'm thinking about the big picture and what could help us. And I'm not saying my way is better in any way, but he was thinking more, let's just sort of follow the herd and just,
Exactly.
Right? Is that?
It's exactly it.
Okay.
So I can say that, to sum it up, maybe, for the expert, if that's who you're dealing with, it's about efficiency and it's about, am I doing things right? So they're still looking for some objective or some strong leader out there to tell them what that is, some norms, right? So that's what they're looking for. And you, from your perspective, perhaps are more looking, am I doing the right thing? And that's something that I need to discern, right? So that may be a little bit the situation there from what I'm understanding. And so what would be helpful for you maybe, and I'm sorry you have to drop off, but are we recording this, by the way? I hope we are.
We are, but I started a little late, so we started.
Okay.
I forgot, and so we missed like the first 5 minutes. But real quick,
Okay.
can you move a couple slides ahead to show the full continuum of adult development, because that might help people visualize it a little bit,
Yes.
too, of these different stages.
Yeah. Yes. There we go.
Yeah, and
so I would like to go through it. Yes, thank you so much for reminding me. So.
And I'll listen to the recording. Thank you so much. This is amazing.
Thank you for being here.
Yes, for sure.
And there is actually a cool offer in the end. You may want to get that.
Oh, I'll be listening. I've already connected with both of you on LinkedIn. I'll be
okay, cool.
Thank
Perfect.
you.
Thanks for joining us, Anna.
Bye.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so let's go deeper into that model, those stages of development, exactly. So what we can see here, let me see, I hope yes, I am advancing. You see on the top, through this adult development journey, we oscillate between either the focus is on me or it is on others. It's either on the individual or collective. And that seems to be something that we go back and forth on. So sometimes that's also a factor that clashes, that somebody who's very much the pleaser is very much on the collective, with their attention. And you may be being more of an achiever. You are the strong leader and you don't understand why they don't have more character or more, courage or more their own opinion and a stance to stand up to power and authority. And that has to do with the maturity. So what we also see is that there are 3 different levels. You see them on the right-hand side. We have the pre-conventional, we have conventional, and post-conventional. So pre-conventional is something where we find, okay, that person has not fully socialized yet in the direct sense of the word, which means they haven't really found why they should be following the rules fully. So they try to kind of wiggle their way around it. They try to get the most they can get, regardless of others, which means if there are rules, well, they would follow just because it's in their own interest. And the only reason actually to follow the rules is that they could get sanctioned. And, if they get found out, they could get sanctioned. But as soon as you're not looking, for them, it makes total sense to go around, because for them, it's a dangerous world and it's about winning or losing. And they have to, of course, be on the winning side. That's a certain form of mind. You may recognize some people in this country or some politicians. And again, you can say it's maybe not an ill intention, but it may be a form of mind that is less mature than we like it to be in the 21st century, but that's a fact. So we've measured them and they're still around. They most often don't make it into a leadership position. So the next form of mind is one of three that we call conventional. Again, conventional is what when we look at the data, when we assess the form of minds of adults globally, and of course, especially for managers and leaders, we find a certain ratio or distribution. So the three that I'm talking about now are the ones that come up most. The diplomat, the first conventional one I already mentioned and described previously, is the one that comes from pleasing. And the motif here is I have to be part of it. I have to be accepted. And therefore I need to be very sensitive about what do people think? What do they like? What do I need to do and be like so that I'm part of it? I'm integrated, right? And I'm accepted. And that's often a great lack of awareness in terms of how do I make an impact? And I need to be able to stand up for certain values. But this form of mind doesn't really have an awareness of their own values. So it's really about pleasing. I already mentioned then this intermediate stage, and this is towards individuation and what we call first freedom. So being very much the pleaser, so I am dependent on what other people think and expect of me. That really means I'm not free of that. Now I'm becoming freer by placing my confidence still not on my own values and inner voice, but now placing it on so-called objective data, right? Problem here, like I mentioned already, just a summary, still not open to feedback. The expert would be open to feedback, but only if it's in a closed room and if you're at least as much an expert on the topic as they are. So that's good to keep in mind, that if you need them to receive feedback, keep that in mind, that you show up as an expert and that you do it behind closed doors, because saving face is still very important to this form of mind. So the expert can slow teams down, especially now in fast-paced, agile environments. They don't really know how to be agile because they're prone to analysis paralysis. That's just their default mode. And if you have somebody like that on your team, then you need to meet them where they're at, and then hopefully, meet them where they're at. And we can speak about more details if you have examples for that. I'm happy to go deeper into that. So the next one, that's where we suppose that it's about 55% of leaders today are in this achiever action logic to be effective. So this is where most organizational cultures are rewarding, you reach KPIs, you know how to effectively lead, empower other people, you are open to feedback, you ask for feedback. This is the first action logic that is open to feedback because the achiever is passionate about self-optimization at all times. And they have a strong vision, strong purpose. The shadow or the downside of the achiever is that really around them in society, and mostly in the West, there is no reason for them to question how they see the world. So when you give them feedback that questions them at the core, and they would say, well, this is how I am, and they can take it quite personally because they don't understand how you can question something that is so confirmed by society, period, right? So what the achiever now has to do is not become free of others, it's to become free of themselves, to become free of what they identify with. So their identifications and what they're attached to. And the identification means they have worked really hard to get where they're at. Many sacrifices, a lot of expertise and experience. And now to become a post-conventional leader, the participative leader, the servant leader, the one that is actually really effective in dealing with complexity means you have to get out of your own way. So you need to understand that your perspective is like these glasses here, and you need to understand when to take them off and say, okay, it's not just about my perspective, even though I have a strong one and I'm used to having people that follow me, but now I have to understand that my perspective is just one of many. And it means that you need to have a good relationship with your ego, and how to put that aside. And that is not a skill, it's a capacity. It's a level of maturity to be able to do that. And we can assess that and we can help you grow that. So the idea is, and there's a lot of data saying that that's the case, to go to the next one, and the next two actually, is often more accessible for women. So the redefining, let's stay there first, is the one that is becoming flexible. And like I said, my perspective is one of many. I love listening. I love asking questions. So I am seeking other perspectives. I'm inquiring into them, and then I'm actually coordinating them. The downside here of the redefining is a couple of things. You can get lost in the perspectives. So people may really appreciate you for being the strong listener and so forth. But at some point you may get overwhelmed with all the different information and perspectives that you're getting. And then you're getting paralyzed because you don't know how to really make a strong decision from there. Second, most organizational cultures do not recognize the redefining as a more mature way of leading. It's often seen just the other way around, as a weak way of leading. I've had clients tell me, people that tell them, I liked you better the way you were before, because you were the strong leader. You gave us the direction. I could always count on that. Why can't you do that again? So we kind of need to see that the redefining needs, what do you call it? A peer group, and also needs to be very strong and clear and grounded in confidence to know the redefining, questioning the status quo is more mature. The coordination perspective is more mature. And now I have to make sure that I don't get lost in the perspectives. I have to find a way to think systemically, to think in contexts. I have to be strong in terms of decision making and so forth. So now I become a transforming form of mind, a catalyst, so that whenever I am in the room, I am capable of not getting distracted or caught up in my own reactivity, in my own lack of confidence, in my insecurities, in my emotions and so forth. But really, I can, again, relate to all these things like an object. I can make conscious choices. And if I have strong feelings, I know how to bring them up in a way that I am, on the one hand, authentic and strong as a human being, as a woman in the room, and at the same time, I can speak it in such a way that it is in service of the greater goal. So that takes a great deal of flexibility, maturity, and inner spaciousness that knows how to sometimes, in the middle of a heated conversation, also take a step back or above and see what is happening here in the room. And if I were to ask one question that would wake us all up because we're getting lost in something here, what would that be? And for you to have that awareness and that skill set to do that, that would be an expression of the transforming form of mind. So I just want to pause here and see if there are any questions or examples that come up. Oh, you are on mute. Yeah.
I just want to say that it feels to me that most of the leaders that were really at the top of the pyramid were more of the achiever type than the transformative type. They were really focused on themselves. And so if this is the model that we see of success, isn't that what we should try to emulate?
Well, great question. It's a fantastic question. It's yes and, because I didn't say enough maybe about the principles of these stages. Each of these stages needs to be transcended and included. So before you can become that redefining or transforming leader, you need to have been grounded fully with confidence in the I. I have an own inner voice. So a strong and healthy achiever is prerequisite for the more mature and post-conventional form of minds. So yes, you need to be a strong achieving leader, and don't get attached to it. Don't let your ego, right, get like, oh my God, this is who I am and this is all there is to it. But really also know that there is a healthy way of living and embodying the achiever mindset that knows in decisions really to lead the group. And at the same time, don't get attached to it. Don't think that that's all you are. That's just one part of your portfolio that you can draw from when it's appropriate and not when you are pleased with it, right? Your your vanity or so. So yes, you should be able to emulate it, and you should be able to let it go, like your coat, and leaving it, somewhere, if that's what's more helpful. And this inner freedom to recognize that you have the choice to also put the achiever to the side in the serve of something more helpful. That's something that we need more of. And when you say most, what I see people when they're very successful, then yeah, that's great. And most often they lack the choice or the awareness that it doesn't just stop there. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's challenging to deal with. And I can say that, at least from my experience with clients, and also with increasingly more female clients, that there is a friction. So I don't know if this is what you're feeling and thinking as you're listening to me, but you may be thinking, okay, I think I am already at that redefining, and I'm asking questions, and I'm leaning into different perspectives and so forth. And I'm pretty good at harnessing those perspectives. And sometimes those achievers, they get on my nerves with their big egos, right? So there is something that you may not have fully integrated and owned yet about your strong achiever. So there may be a blind spot or some shadow in you, because I can say almost always, if you have a strong emotional reaction, there is still some gold for you and some work for you to be done to say, I want to build a really, really strong and healthy relationship with my inner achiever, so that I'm not threatened and I'm not irritated or triggered when there is a strong ego in the room. I can recognize it, but I don't have to get triggered and then go down spiraling. I can recognize it. I can live up to that occasion and say, well, here I am, another achiever in the face of an achiever. And let's take it from there. How can I help that other one elevate him or herself? So that's the idea. I often see that dynamic in women saying, oh, that big ego. And at the same time, I would say there may be some work to be done for us. And I'm including myself here.
And I'm going to hop in real quick with two quick things. One of the things that has that I recognize in myself too is that Marion had taught me that, you don't only operate from one of these. So like she said, it's kind of a yes, and you don't only operate from one of these action logics. Maybe when you're doing your best work and you're in flow, you're in the redefining or the transformative. But when you're at times of stress or to conform to what works best in your organization or whatever, you move to achiever. Or at times at high stress, like anytime I'm involved with my family and my parents, I go back into the what is it?
Diplomat?
The diplomat, yes. Because I'm like, okay, high stress, go into my safe place. Hold on, no, everyone, don't be mad. It's fine. And so I think we kind of move back and forth between these, but recognizing where they are helps you understand kind of where you're coming from and where other people around you are coming from. That's how it's been helpful for me, at least when I understand kind of where I do my best work versus where I fall at times of stress.
Exactly. So it's about the flexibility and the awareness. Where do you operate from most of the time? And to become flexible to go to other action logics that you've already gone through when it's appropriate, and then to ideally maybe also elevate and go to the next stage.
And real quick, to 15 minutes.
Yes. So are there any other questions before I continue? Okay. So I'm going to go rather quick because this is also part of the recording that you have, the distribution expert. I said already 55%. So this is still the case, the majority. Redefining is coming and is struggling, as we know, because they are lacking allies and rewarding systems and acknowledgement that redefining is the good way to lead today. And transforming still less than 5%. So again, for you to anchor this now for yourself, so you can maybe speak and reflect about it. The opportunist, the first pre-conventional, I have to win is the motif. Second, I have to please is the diplomat. I have to be objective and rational is the expert. I have to get things done and chasing time is the achiever. I Value everyone's perspective is the redefining action logic, and I transform myself and others around me. That's just who I am. That's the transforming form of mind. Okay, I'm going to jump over this one actually and go into the next one. I just want to give it some flesh here and introduce Erica to you. So just to give you an idea of a client, of course, this is anonymized, somebody that we worked with and how we approached it to apply these action logics and help her in her development and also her team and how she relates to them. So this is Erica, and she leads an executive leadership team of a global organization. And of course, she also has to manage the relationship with the corporate board. And she's been in this CEO role for about 18 months. And before that, she was actually an ELT, or executive leadership team member, for about 2 years. She's an internal hire, and she's been with the company altogether for 8 years. So Erica comes actually to us, to me and my colleague David, because she has 3 major challenges that she shares with us in our briefing calls. She's having a hard time making decisions and also is finding it hard to get her team to make decisions. And they often get stuck in this analysis paralysis that I already mentioned. Second, she's also having a hard time getting her team to collaborate with each other. So they are very siloed. If some of you may recognize that, they are very siloed in the way that they work. And third, she's also struggling with finding a way to communicate with her team and with the board. So something about her way of communication is getting in the way, and she's getting frustrated because she leaves conversations over and over again where she doesn't feel understood and she doesn't know how she's creating that result. So it's decisions, it's the collaborations and the silos, and she doesn't feel understood by team and board. Okay, so we did the GLP, or this diagnostic instrument that helps us assess Erica and say what's the main action logic that she's making meaning from. And so we found that Erica actually is already in the post-conventional, the redefining. And so that means that she is seeking collaboration. She's challenged to communicate across the different action logics, the less mature ones especially, of course. And she also gets overwhelmed by the many perspectives that she's very curious about, but she doesn't really then know what to do with it to become effective. And she often feels quite lonely and also forced to compromise so others understand her. Her growth edge is towards the transforming form of mind. And that means she needs to work on her systemic awareness. So not on details and not on perspectives, but now really think in systems. And then to permit herself to make timely leadership interventions. She knows how to create the space for people operating from different action logics when she's at transforming form of mind. Now she can really integrate them without being irritated. And she facilitates team meetings across these different action logics and perspectives with a sense of ease and joy, actually. And she now uses very clear principles that she's aware of to guide decision making. So it's not the external norms, and this is how it's been done here, but now she can really come up with novel ways of doing things because she's grounded in principles. Okay. So I will share these slides with you. So now we look at her team. There's, like I said, some dynamics, and here one's coming up between the redefining and the expert. So again, yeah, the expert, like I mentioned, I'm going to go fairly fast, sees the world as problems and solutions that can be solved with their expertise. And they have to be very, very detailed, and everything can be solved if it's only analyzed enough. Right? Maybe some of you recognize that. They have a belief that, basically the world is predictable and that there is something like an objective truth. And when you come to that, then everything will be fine. There's also a belief still that the leader should know the answer, and that if they are not given from the leader that answer, then they are not responsible. And then they basically also just lean back and say, well, it's not my problem. The leader is not doing his or her job. I have a client right now who's actually literally said these things. So, and they also, and that's kind of challenging today is that they struggle with what seems to them contradictory or paradoxical. And that's what we have more and more of today, right? So the redefining actually, and that's where Erica scored at, she seeks the collaboration. And we already said, she's challenged to communicate across diverse action logics in her team. So when she comes into contact and is dependent on the expert, she really has a challenge. She doesn't know how to do it, and she reacts very frustrated and often just closes up, and sometimes finds herself also talking about that person instead of with the person. She's a bit helpless there. Okay, I'm gonna go a little bit faster here. So when we looked at her team, we saw that 5 of her team members score at expert. So that's why she is feeling the frustration, because that's a form of mind that she feels is really getting in the way and slowing her down. And there's something also in her that we're working on so that she can develop that strong relationship with her own inner expert, of course. So they are still looking for this place where everything is in order, and Erica knows that that will never happen again. We are in times where this situation is something that we can long for, but we all know this new normal is not what we go back to pre-COVID. It's something new. The achiever, 4 team members score at the achiever, and they're very results oriented. They're very confident in their perspective, and they really think that where Erica is leading from is weak for sure, and that if only she listened to them, and strong male perspectives and voices in the room as well. And so that's something also that she's very challenged by, that she literally also says, those big egos in the room, I feel stuck. I do not know how to meet them where they're at. And so she's thinking of letting them go. And actually some of those things have already been initiated. So only 1 other member on her team scores at the same level of meaning making as her. So what we are recommending to Erica is that those 2 actually collaborate closely so they can support each other in how they deal with the group dynamics. So we see we have 3 different action logics in the team. And when we know of that, we have now a shared language for them to speak about it. And I see that I have to go much faster, and I'm actually going to go. We're going to say that.
Yeah, I was going to say we have about 5 minutes, so we may want to wrap up with any final questions and then talk about next steps and what how to connect with you.
Yeah. So one of the diagnostics, not the one about the action logics, but another one that we do, they have a large database, and they definitely say that, and we know this from other studies, that women are more effective leaders in the face of complexity. The question is, how can they harness it even more? Knowing about that advantage that they have in terms of being less of a reactive leader and more of a creative leader. And so I just want to say this advantage that women have is proven, but being seen with that advantage, I think, is another thing. And we have found that the diagnostic in the action logic is very, very helpful for women, especially that we work with, to become more effective in the face of, let's say, the achiever mindset, the expert mindset, also the redefining in themselves where they get lost in the many perspectives. And that is why I would like to, I'm going to go through these, you're going to get these slides. How are you going to lever your advantage is something that I would like to offer to you. So if that's okay, I would just like to go to my offer. It's whether you're interested in your action logic, which is actually the foundation of everything in terms of that's how you make meaning of the world. That's good for you to know. And then to understand, what do you fall back to when you're under stress? And also, where are you leaning towards, and how can you emulate maybe behavior that is already beyond you, but you're already kind of leaning into it. That's something that I would like to offer. So I have a diagnostic to help you assess the action logic, and it's actually something that I'm certified in. So if you were to do that, you would pay for the debrief. I don't earn any money, but you would get a free debrief with me as a certified, master certified coach, 1 or 2 sessions. That's my offer to members from Chief. And there's another diagnostic I haven't mentioned, but I'll just say one sentence. It's about leadership skills, the 4 mega skills that we have found that the Harvard University or the Lectica Institute has found are the most relevant mega skills. I can send you more information on that, and I'm offering you to do a free debrief with me on either one of these, which means 1 or 2 sessions of 90 minutes. And that's something that I'm offering you. And now I'm stopping to talk. So that's my offer.
Does anyone have any questions on just the content here? Any follow-up, anything? I know it's a really deep concept that we went over very, very quickly. And obviously we could talk about it all day, but
yes.
Does anyone maybe recognize some of these areas in their own teams or have any questions?
I found this incredibly valuable. So thank you for this session. I've already tried to connect with you on LinkedIn, so I hope you will connect back with me. And
Yes.
I'd love to understand more about the offer. And so I'm going to reach out separately as well.
Great. Thank you.
Perfect. Yeah, I will say I did this. I went through this exercise and this diagnostic, and it was incredibly helpful. And this is not, I'm only hosting this because I believe in Marion's work, because I know what it's done for my own business and my own leadership. And so it was really powerful.
Thank you.
All right. Oh, thanks for joining us, Elle. Good to see you. Bye. Yeah, so anyone, I put Marion's information in here. You guys can find me on the Chief platform too. So if you have any questions or you want either of these videos or want to connect with Marion to spend some time learning about the diagnostics. So, feel free to reach out to either of us, and I put our contact information in the chat as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for putting this together and for joining us. So it's so interesting, and I love it. I mean, the diagnostic tool that you're using is something that's a little bit new to me. I've used the Gallup Strength Finder for myself and my teams before, but I really like this, what you've shared. So appreciate it. Look forward to connecting and hopefully being part of, spending some time with you to do this with you. And Deborah, thank you so much for connecting us with Marion.
Absolutely, no problem. And Evelyn, I have done the StrengthsFinder as well, which I really, really enjoyed at the time. And I thought, oh, StrengthsFinder, like that was really helpful too. And then Marion's is like StrengthsFinder on steroids for 10 years. So it was really helpful. I really liked it a lot. But yeah, I'm so glad you guys got something out of this. I find this topic fascinating, and it helps me understand how to relate to the people around me, my team and my clients and my family and kids. And so it is helpful.
Yeah, thank you everyone for attending. Thanks for the great questions and contributions. And I look forward to connecting with you on LinkedIn and maybe even doing a debrief with you if that's what you are interested in.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks, everyone.